You are not alone in feeling it, the slow, dull ache behind your eyes when the feed scrolls on and on. When every headline is a shout, and every comment is a fight. When you start to wonder if your mind has become a hallway other people sprint through. There is a moment you might not admit to anyone. The moment you realize you are reconsuming more information than at any point in your life, and understanding less. You can feel your attention being sliced into thinner and thinner pieces. And you can quite remember the last time you changed your mind because of evidence rather than a mood. This video is not about other people's stupidity. It is about our own. It is about the quiet deal we made often, without noticing, to trade discomfort for certainty, nuance for speed, thinking for performative agreement. It is about why critical thinking, the slow and sometimes lonely craft of making sense, is disappearing in public while we get better at looking like we're thinking in private. Let's begin in a place more honest than comfortable. Your morning routine. You wake up and reach for your phone before you fully return to your body. Overnight, a few thousand minds have poured into your pocket. Some of them outrage you, some delight you. Most skim the surface of your attention, like stones across water. You glance at the comments on your post, enough hearts to keep the day moving. You step into the shower, and an argument you saw 5 minutes ago is still whispering to you, already shaping your mood, already writing your day's first draft. By breakfast, you have taken in more opinions than a scholar from a few centuries ago might read in a month. You feel informed, but inside, another feeling lingers. The uneasy sense that the information did not become knowledge. It bounced, it ricocheted, it didn't integrate. The distance between information and knowledge is effort. The distance between knowledge and wisdom is courage. And our era is quietly optimized to save us both. Philosophers across time understood the danger of this convenience. Socrates stood in the market of Athens, asking naive questions until illusions cracked. He made thinking public and adversarial in the healthiest sense, an examination before applause. Centuries later, a scientist in a wheelchair, Stephen Hawking, spent his life translating the universe's cold mathematics into human stories. He warned, in different words, that the most dangerous ignorance is not what we don't know, but what we think we know without testing. This is not a slogan. It is a warning label for the mind. Today, the testing is missing. Or rather, the testing has been offloaded to invisible machines that serve us what we will already pass. The feed does not present a jury, it presents cheerleaders. If you zoom out, the story is larger than social media. It starts in the brain. Your brain, beautiful, exquisitely lazy, was designed to conserve energy. It loves patterns, shortcuts, compressions. Psychologists call them heuristics, rough rules that help us survive. Most of the time they save us. But when the world speeds up and the volume of stimuli explodes, those same heuristics turn into traps. You rely on confirmation, the feeling that new information fits your existing model. You prize coherence over accuracy. You prefer stories that place you as the insightful protagonist and your opponents as caricatures. You confuse the clarity of a sentence with the truth of a claim. You accept fluency, the ease with which words flow, as a proxy for facts. And because the brain is a social organ, you often trade truth for belonging without any conscious negotiation. You do this, I do this, we all do. If you doubt it, consider 3 experiments from the last century. In the first, a group is asked to judge line lengths. The correct answer is obvious, but when Confederates, people planted by the experimenter, give the wrong answer with confidence, many participants simply follow. This is the Asch conformity experiment, and it is boring on paper until you realize it describes the internet every hour of the day. In the second, a man in a lab coat asks participants to give what they believe are painful shocks to another person. Many continue far beyond their comfort because authority whispers that it's necessary. This is Milgram. It is supposed to be a lesson about obedience. In the digital age, the authority is the trending narrative, the expert cadence of a thread, the prestige of a blue check, the sheer number of upvotes gathered quickly enough to feel like truth. In the third, students rank their ability and knowledge against others. The worst often rank themselves highest. The most skilled often underestimate themselves. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect. But there is a darker twist no one taught you. When a culture rewards confidence and speed, it manufactures Dunning-Kruger at scale. We are building systems in which the person most certain goes first, speaks loudest, and receives the feedback loops that harden belief. If all of this sounds abstract, let me pull you into one story. A few years ago, a young analyst ILL call her, Liano joined a team tasked with making an important policy recommendation for a city's transit system. The team gathered data, but they also gathered something else, a mood. The city had a popular narrative. Cars were freedom, buses were failure. The analytics suggested a different picture. Small changes in bus routes and frequency would do more for real mobility than a flashy highway expansion. Lena raised the numbers. They were elegant and boring. The room preferred stories. The team went with the mood. Months later, costs ballooned. Congestion worsened. A new analysis, this time under pressure, revealed what Lena's original spreadsheet already knew. The city paid millions to learn a truth it refused when it was cheap. This too is how collective stupidity rises. Not because we lack data, but because we lack the patience to follow it when it is inconvenient and the courage to say out loud, our favorite story is wrong. The uncomfortable truth is that critical thinking is hard because it breaks your own heart first. It requires you to watch the ideas that once defined you begin to crumble without immediately replacing them with something easy. It means letting go of an identity that has gained you friends, followers, and a sense of direction. It means sitting inside, not knowing, longer than is comfortable, until a better model emerges. No algorithm rewards this. Very few communities celebrate it. But every advance in science, ethics, and human dignity has depended on it. What changed in our time is the scale and speed of the reward for not doing it. A century ago, your village opinion shaped the number of nods you got at the market. Today, your opinion can shape or echo the mood of millions in a day. The dopamine is louder. The reputational stakes feel higher. The penalty for asking the naive question can be instant and global. You may be one comment away from a storm, and so you optimize not for truth, but for survival. You sidestep the thought that might alienate your tribe. You decorate your insights to align with the trend. You mistake visibility for wisdom. You call this prudence. The name is fear. We need to understand one more mechanism, arguably the most powerful one, for how collective stupidity grows while individual intelligence rises. The comfort machine. I use that term to describe the web of incentives, interfaces, and internal habits that make it easier to feel right than to be right. The comfort machine is not a conspiracy. It is a natural outcome of many rational decisions. Platforms maximizing engagement, newsrooms competing for attention, creators optimizing thumbnails, you and I optimizing for time. Every knob turns a little toward convenience. Nothing feels malicious. Yet the net result is a world in which our most common experience of knowledge is weightless. It slides, it amuses, it confirms, it disappears. The comfort machine has 4 gears. The first is speed. The faster we consume, the less time we have for skeptical pause. The pause is where thinking happens. Without it, we are permanently pre-thought. Speed is intoxicating because it provides the illusion of momentum. But momentum is not progress if we are accelerating in circles. The second is sorting. Algorithms do not understand truth, but they understand your past. They build a topography of your attention and offer you terrain you will not stumble on. This helps when you need a cooking tutorial. It hurts when you need a disagreement that elevates rather than humiliates. Your world gets narrower while you mistake the personalization of information for mastery of a subject. The third is performativity. We are rarely thinking in private anymore. We are rehearsing in public. The presence of an imagined audience alters the way a thought forms. It becomes a performance of identity rather than a search for accuracy. We are composing for applause before we find the melody. The fourth is outsourcing. We outsource memory to devices, judgment to trending graphs, moral intuition to the majority stance in our circle. Outsourcing can be wise. No one person should carry all knowledge. But when we outsource the habit of disbelief, we become tourists in our own mind. We live in a furnished apartment of opinions. Now for a twist. Intelligence has never been more abundant. Tools have never been more powerful. In some ways, our species has never felt smarter. A high school student can visualize gravitational waves in 3 clicks. A novelist can draft 3 endings in an afternoon with the help of machine collaborators. A founder can test a hypothesis in a week that once took a lab a year. We are smarter at the edges. We are dumber in the middle. This paradox, smarter tools, duller judgment, is precisely the kind of phenomenon Stephen Hawking understood in physics. Systems can contain opposites. You can have local order and global chaos. You can have brilliant specialists inside a culture that keeps making the same elementary mistakes, confusing anecdotes for evidence, certainty for courage, and virality for value. So what do we do? Not in theory, in the friction of an ordinary day. Begin with a vow small enough to keep, the vow of the pause. Before you share, argue, or decide, pause for one breath longer than you want, not 5 minutes, one breath. In that space, ask a question dangerously simple. What would make this false? If the answer is nothing, you are looking at identity, not evidence. If the answer exists, spend 60 seconds seeking it. You will be shocked how often 60 honest seconds expose the thread you need to pull. Next, adopt a practice I call one clean source. In a noisy world, pick one source of information that is consistently sober, transparent about uncertainty, and boring in presentation. It might be a journal, a statistic bureau, a historian's newsletter, a technical writer who prefers footnotes to flames. Let that source shape your priors more than a feed that flatters you. Boring is a feature. Boring means fewer incentives to entertain you at the price of nuance. Third, schedule disagreement. Do not rely on it to find you. Seek it like exercise. Weekly, collect one thoughtful argument against something you believe. Read it with the assumption that the author is at least as intelligent as you. If you feel disgusted by the first paragraph, examine whether you hate their conclusion or their tone. Disgust is not data. Fourth, practice stick manning. Before you refute an idea, state it in terms the other side would sign. Until they would say yes, that's fair, you have not earned your disagreement. This is not about kindness. It is about accuracy. You cannot land a punch on a straw man and call it victory. Fifth, change the scoreboard. In your personal life, reward yourself not for being right, but for noticing when you were wrong and updating. Keep a changed my mind log. Each entry is a receipt of growth. Over time, the fear of being wrong shrinks because you have tied self-respect to revision rather than stubbornness. You begin to crave the feeling of calibration more than the performance of consistency. Sixth, make thinking visible again privately. Keep a notebook where you write before you reply. Draw the argument. Map the claim, the evidence, the counter-evidence, the uncertainty. Thinking in diagrams returns topography to a landscape flattened by the scroll. You are giving your mind a room of its own, away from the performative stage. Seventh, use the machines but specify the job. Let tools summarize, translate, and surface references. Do not let them decide for you what matters. Stephen Hawking spent decades turning incomprehensible equations into words the rest of us could hold. He did not outsource the meaning of his work to popularity. He translated complexity into humility. We should do the same with our tools. Ask them to reduce friction in the mechanics, increase friction in the judgment. Eighth, curate your circle like a lab. In a good lab, people disagree about models, not motives. They share protocols, not just conclusions. They replicate each other's work before celebrating it. If your circle cannot disagree without suspicion, you are in a club, not a lab. Clubs provide comfort. Labs produce knowledge. Ninth, relearn boredom. Boredom is not the absence of stimulation. It is the space where deep work begins. Many of history's breakthroughs were nurtured in the greenhouse of boredom. Long walks, long waits, long drafts. If you feel panic in boredom, it is a sign your nervous system has been trained to seek constant novelty. That is not a personality trait. It is a habit you can unlearn. Recovering boredom is recovering the depth that speed steals. 10th, teach as if you might be wrong. The impulse to teach parenting, mentoring, posting is noble, but it hardens into proclamation when we forget that instruction is an act of hypothesis. Say, here is how I understand it today, and here are the places my understanding could fail. Model uncertainty as a strength. Show younger minds that confidence without calibration is cheap. Let's return to Lena for a finale. Weeks after the city's project went off track, the team reconvened, chastened. The political winds had shifted. Evidence was now fashionable. Lena could have arrived triumphant, armed with "I told you so." Instead, she brought a map of her original analysis with a section circled in red, where her model had oversimplified writer behavior at night. "I was right about the direction," she said, "and wrong about the distribution." The room went quiet. In that moment, something radical happened. The culture began to change. The cost of revising a belief in public suddenly felt like status, not shame. Critical thinking is not a talent, it is a culture. and culture is a series of brave, small acts repeated until they look like air. There is a question we must confront before we close. Why does the disappearance of critical thinking feel worse now than, say, 100 years ago? People have always believed foolish things. What is new is not that humans are fallible, but that the consequences of synchronized error scale instantly. An untested narrative can sweep across a civilization in days and then harden into policy, habit, and curriculum before it has even been named. The lag between bad idea and real harm has narrowed. The last defense we have is not our IQ. It is our willingness to pause, test, and say no to our favorite illusions. Another twist. The algorithm is not your enemy. Your agreement with it is. Algorithms are mirrors. They reflect a million small yeses you give them. If you want a different mirror, offer a different face. Click differently for a month, and you will watch your world bend into a slightly more interesting shape. Your feed will not become Socrates, but it will stop being a hall of your own echo. We cannot wait for systems to change before we behave as if they have. Behavior is how systems change. You might ask, is there hope? There is more than hope. There is agency. Imagine if 10% of us decided to shoulder the social cost of thinking out loud with humility. Imagine if 10% of us praised one another not for perfect takes, but for honest revisions. Imagine if schools graded not only answers but updates. Imagine if leaders said, here is what we think, here is how we might be wrong, here is what would change our mind, and meant it. Imagine if you, tomorrow, told a friend, I realized I was wrong about this, and watched how it gave them permission to be braver. The smartest society in history can become the wisest if it learns to love the friction that truth requires. We can build a culture where critical thinking feels less like isolation and more like belonging. Among people who value reality more than theatrics, we can make the pause fashionable. Too close, I want to leave you with a final image. Picture a night sky, not the washed-out glow above a city, but a dark field of actual stars. As you stand there, something Stephen Hawking spent his life teaching becomes visceral. We are small, but we are also capable of knowing. The cosmos does not care about our trends. It yields its secrets to careful minds. Each careful mind, in turn, lights a small lamp. Enough lamps, and a civilization can become a constellation. We do not need fewer opinions. We need more light. We need people willing to be the first in a room to ask, what would make this false? We need people brave enough to map their uncertainty in public, so others are licensed to do the same. We need not a revolution of rage, but a reformation of habits. The vow of the pause. One clean source, scheduled disagreement, steel manning, changed mind logs, private notebooks, specified tools, lab-like circles, relearned boredom, and teaching as hypothesis. You might feel small in the face of a culture that rewards speed and certainty. But every culture was built from habits repeated in kitchens, classrooms, offices, and comment sections. Every culture can be rebuilt the same way. Withdraw 1 unit of attention from the comfort machine and invest it in a practice that increases reality. If enough of us do this, the rising tide of collective stupidity will meet the shore of collective courage. Start today. Before you close this tab, write down one belief you have not examined in a year. Spend a week testing it. Invite one friend to argue kindly, seriously against it. Report back to yourself. That act might feel provincial, too small to matter. It is not. It is how civilizations move one mind at a time, away from the warm gravity of the crowd and toward the cold, exhilarating honesty of the sky. Not because we hate comfort, but because we love truth more. And if you still feel that ache behind your eyes at the end of a long scroll, consider this. It is not fatigue. It is your mind reminding you that it was made for more than reacting. It was made for seeing, for weighing, for changing, for lighting a lamp in the dark, and in doing so, helping the rest of us find our way home.